The year was 1988. I was 7. My younger brother, Adam, was 4. That year, we really enjoyed watching the Winter Olympics on TV. That was the year, especially the bobsledding. That was the year of the Jamaican bobsled team. If you've seen the movie Cool Runnings, I know some of you watching, or you're like under 30, you've never seen it, but that's okay. So that was that year. And so, anyway, watching bobsledding, for us, we were kids, that turned into playing bobsledding. We lived in Indianapolis, which is pretty flat, but we would play inside. We would get these cardboard boxes or laundry baskets, whatever. We would get inside and we pretend that we were bobsledding down the hill, and we just played that all the time. One day, we were upstairs in my parents' bedroom, and we were playing bobsled, and we happened to be playing it in a suitcase. And it just happened that this was a brand new suitcase that my parents had just purchased. And I don't remember exactly how this part of it happened, but my brother ended up inside the suitcase, and we zipped it up. We thought that was funny. And so I remember asking something along the lines of, do you want to show Mom? And he said, yeah. Now, we found out later, like way after the fact, there was a miscommunication that took place there. In his mind, he just thought I was going to go get Mom. She would come, she'd see him in the suitcase, oh, isn't that cute? And that would be that. For me, I mean, we were upstairs, Mom was downstairs, we were playing bobsled. So in my 7-year-old wisdom, I picked up the suitcase and I took it to the top of the steps and I gave it a shove. In my mind, it was just, we had carpeted steps in my mind. The suitcase was just going to just slide smoothly down like a bobsled. It did not. It went end over end all the way down the steps. So I followed it down, and Mom hears the noise and she comes running, and she sees the suitcase at the bottom of the stairs, and she starts like scolding me for being rough on a brand new suitcase. And so I'm like, Mom, Adam's inside. I mean, you're missing the lead here. Like, this is the cool part. She's like, what? So she unzips the suitcase, and there's my brother with like eyes like saucers. He was fine. He wasn't hurt physically, but I don't even remember getting in trouble for it, because even at the time, my parents just thought it was funny, and they loved telling this story to people. So over time, it became one of those like legendary stories that was retold over and over again, just one of those family stories. Adam told it at my wedding, I told it at his wedding. We tell the story just a little differently, as you might imagine. And now, our kids, our spouses' families, they've all heard about it. And people who hear this story, they love to say to me, I just can't believe it. I can't believe you would throw your brother down the stairs in a suitcase like I'm this terrible person. I didn't mean to hurt him, okay? I was 7. It was bobsledding. But I do admit, it's pretty funny. It's pretty funny. You might have some of your own stories like that in your family that just get retold over and over again. We love to tell stories like that. But for some reason, a lot of us find it a lot harder to tell our Jesus stories. We've been going through this series called The Path, talking about what it means to be followers, disciples of Jesus. That's what Jesus is looking for. People who aren't just going to be going through the motions or doing the bare minimum, but people who are all in, fully on board. To be a disciple of Jesus means we become like Jesus. And not just trying to like tweak or modify our behavior, try really hard, or by obeying a set of rules, okay? But instead, we become like Jesus by focusing on a deeper relationship with him. And so that he can work in us and through us, produce fruit. God helps us to live, love, give, and go as Jesus taught and modeled. Today we wrap up this series. You can check out previous messages on YouTube or our website, but today we wrap it up and it's all about go, learning to go as Jesus taught and modeled. Okay, we're going to look at the very end of the book of Matthew. One of the four Gospels are biographies of Jesus in the Bible. Matthew chapter 28, starting with verse 18, very famous passage. Jesus has already risen from the dead at this point, and he's about to ascend back into heaven and set his apostles loose on the world. But before he does, he has some instructions for his disciples on what to do next. This has a name. This passage is what we call the Great Commission. And it's how Matthew ends his gospel. Here it is, Matthew 28, starting with verse 18. Then Jesus came to them and said, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always, to the very end of the age." Jesus says, I am God. I have all authority. And I'm giving you a mission. And here it is. Go. Make disciples. Make new ones, baptizing them, and better ones, teaching them to obey everything I've commanded you. Train them in this new way of life, the life you learned from me. But you don't have to do it alone, because I will always be there with you. That's the job. That is the commission. Go and make new and better disciples. That's the assignment that Jesus gives to all of his followers. A critical part of being his disciple is that we help make more disciples. It's the responsibility of all of us. And not everyone needs to be a missionary in another country. Not everyone needs to be like a minister on staff at a church or teach. But those are not the only people whose job it is to make a disciple. Making disciples is a big job, and it's a job that involves all of us. There's a word for making new disciples of Jesus, telling people about him, inviting people into his community, his family. A lot of people don't like this word. It's been known to make people cringe, break out in hives, start hyperventilating. The word is evangelism. I know. It's been said that there are two kinds of people who don't like evangelism: Christians and non-Christians, right? Evangelism, all it is telling people about Jesus, but it makes us feel uncomfortable, a lot of us. It can be really scary. Some people have had negative experiences with it, with attempts at evangelism, on both sides of the equation. Some people even consider, this is a growing group, even consider it like morally wrong. Like they think it's offensive to try to convince someone else to believe what you believe. Even some Christians see it that way. That it's okay for you, but don't try to tell me what I need to believe. Okay? So whether they consider it wrong or just scary, a lot of Christians, when they hear they're supposed to make disciples and share their faith, they're just like, nope, not doing that. And you know what? It can be scary. It can, to share your faith. It can be uncomfortable. But I think there's some things that can make it way worse. Like, I think it makes it way worse when we think we have to use a method of telling people about Jesus that is not a good match for our personalities or for our culture. Like me, I do not respond well when I feel like somebody is trying to sell me something. Okay? If you happen to work, or you know somebody who happens to work in a commission-based sales job, please know you have my respect. Okay? I could not do what you do. I know there are great salespeople out there who have their customers' best interests at heart. Okay? We've worked with some of those. But there are also those who are all about the sales pitch, all about the upsell, all about the pressure, and that really turns me off. I remember once years ago, like long time ago, Jen and I were buying a dishwasher, and we'd already kind of seen one that we had our eye on. It was on sale or something, and it was in one of these commission-based stores, right? And so we'd already kind of decided on this dishwasher, but then a young salesman comes up, eager, and starts giving us this obviously pre-rehearsed sales pitch. And it was so like pushy and impersonal that I politely ended the conversation and I just walked away. And I wasn't going to get that dishwasher. Well, Jen, like, she talked me down, okay? she helped me see reason, and we did end up getting it. But it was in spite of the salesman, not because of him. Some approaches to evangelism are kind of like that sales pitch, that salesman. And maybe that works for some people. I do not respond well to it. So I feel like I don't want to use that kind of tactic with other people, especially when we're talking about something as important as following Jesus. This is not just a product to be sold, right? This past summer, I was in New York City with my dad and my brother. We were walking through Times Square, just kind of looking around, doing the tourist thing. We were there to watch some ball games. And we saw, I think, 3 different, like, people with a megaphone or a sound system preaching at people about why they needed to repent. You know, talking a lot about hell and sin and condemnation, really confrontational, in people's face. There were some people standing around listening to them, and there may be people who do respond well to that sort of thing, okay? But my friends, my family, the people I grew up with, I can't imagine that approach actually working. And if that is what is expected of me to make disciples, I'm going to have a really hard time doing it. But here's the thing. In the New Testament, we see Jesus and his followers using many different approaches to spreading the good news about Jesus. Sometimes it was pretty confrontational, especially when they were talking to religious people, religious leaders in particular. But other times it was conversational, it was gentle. Sometimes it was about meeting people's felt needs and therefore earning the right to be heard. They did not have a one-size-fits-all approach to evangelism. So it all depended on who they were talking to. The Apostle Paul, one of the best evangelists ever, right, wrote about this in one of his letters, New Testament book of 1 Corinthians. He said that he would become like a slave to everyone in order to reach as many people as possible. When he was with Jewish people, he lived like a Jewish person. When he was with non-Jewish people, he lived like them. He related with them on their level. He said, I have become all things to all people, so that by all possible means, I might save some. I do all this for the sake of the gospel, that I may share in its blessings. Paul adapted his methodology based on the group of people he was trying to reach. The message did not change. The good news about Jesus was the same. But how he communicated that message depended a lot on the people he was talking to. And the same is true today. There are certain approaches to talking about Jesus that connect better with different groups of people than with others. And there are methods that may have been very effective 50 or 100 years ago that no longer work the same way because the world is different. More and more people don't even really know who Jesus is. They're starting from a different set of assumptions. So all I'm saying, evangelism does not have to mean being a sidewalk preacher or a salesperson for Jesus. Having said all that, I think there is an approach that people tend to find relatively easy and effective, and that is to tell your story. Tell your Jesus story. Stories are powerful. I mean, a good story can move us and inspire us the way that few other things can. Like, think about your favorite movie, whatever it is. Why'd you like it? Well, one reason is probably that it drew you in to the story that it was telling. You identified with one of the characters, or it triggered an emotional response in you. That's the power of story. Jesus used stories all the time to illustrate the points he was making. And in fact, the Bible is really one big story from beginning to end. One of the most powerful ways we can share our faith, we can make disciples, is to tell people our Jesus story. Has Jesus changed your life? Most followers of Jesus would say yes. Now, if not, that's another conversation. We'll talk about that. But if Jesus has changed your life, tell people about it. That's it. Before Jesus, I was this. And then I met Jesus. And now I'm this. Or without Jesus, I'm this way. But with Jesus, I'm this way. Doesn't have to be long, doesn't have to be polished. In fact, in some ways, it's better if it's not. And I do think it's good to think it through ahead of time, what your story is, so that you can share it with others. What was your life like without Jesus? Maybe you were stuck in an endless cycle of addiction. But through Jesus, you're not a slave to sin anymore. You're free. Maybe you were filled with insecurities and doubt. And Jesus has shown you who you really are, who you are to him. Maybe you just had loads of guilt and shame for things you had done in your past, but in Jesus you find mercy and forgiveness. Maybe your life is all about chasing after temporary pleasures, and it lacked meaning, lacked purpose. It was going nowhere. But Jesus gave you a purpose, and he gave you hope. How has Jesus changed you? Now, you don't have to be perfect now. You don't have to have it all figured out. It's okay to still be a work in progress. We all are. But that doesn't mean you can't tell the story of how Jesus has been working in you. I know some people are like, well, but I've always been a Christian. I grew up a Christian. So there really is no before Jesus for me. Maybe that's you. That's me too. I started out going to church. My dad's a preacher, and I'm still a Christian now. That's a boring story, right? Sometimes I wish my Jesus story were a little more dramatic, But even if there's never been a time in your life when you would not have thought of yourself as a Christian, I bet you still have some Jesus stories. How has he changed you? How has he shaped you and grown you? For me, just one example, I used to think that as long as I acted like I thought, that as long as I appeared to do the right thing in public, on the outside, and avoid certain public sins, it didn't matter that much what was going on inside my mind, my attitudes, my thought life. So it was like I was two different people. There was the one that everybody else saw, and the one that only God and I knew about. But Jesus has shown me that my inner thought life, my attitudes, that really does matter. And he, through his Spirit, is in the process of renewing my mind so that I'm one man, one person, sold out for him. Now, I'm not all the way there yet, but I'm growing. See what I mean? So tell your story. Tell people what Jesus has done for you and that he can do the same for them. You're not selling something, not trying to manipulate anyone. Just being honest about the difference that Jesus has made in your life and see where the conversation goes after that. Talk about why you follow Jesus, why you do the church thing. Now, some people really worry about what if they ask a question that I don't know the answer to. Well, that could happen because you'll never have all the answers. I don't care if you have degrees in theology or you've years and years of ministry experience. Trust me, you will not know it all. And it's okay to say, I don't know. It may be even better to say, I don't know, but how about we try to find out the answer together? Telling your story isn't preaching a sermon at somebody. It's not giving somebody like a theological discourse. And it's not trying to pick a debate with someone. Debating usually just makes people more firmly entrenched in their positions. It's just telling them how Jesus has changed your life. It's like Peter wrote in one of his letters in the New Testament, if someone asks about your hope as a believer, always be ready to explain it. But do this in a gentle and respectful way. Explain why you have the hope you have. And do it gently and respectfully. Tell your Jesus story. Depending on how the conversation goes, a great next step may be to invite them. Sometimes that might even be the first step. Now, exactly where you invite them might depend on the relationship you have with them, or where you think they might connect best. For some people, it might be invite them to coffee, invite them over to your house, invite them to lunch. Other people, it's a worship service. They connect. They would be able to connect in a worship service. So invite them to Renaissance. Other people connect better in like a small group setting, a little more intimate. So like a Ren group meets at home or a restaurant, just a small group of people, discussion based. For some people, something like a parents' night out, like the one we have coming up here this coming week, or that might be a good first step, or a Christmas event, Easter egg hunt, special holiday service, whatever. To kind of get their family involved, or to even to let them know that not all Christians are scary and strange. I mean, I'm a little strange, but I mean, not that strange. When you invite them to any of those things, you're inviting them to come and see. To come see what's special about Jesus. And see what's special about this particular church community, which I think it is pretty special. If we're all telling our Jesus stories and we're inviting people, we're going to grow. And I think that's great. And I know many of us appreciate the small, intimate feel right now, and I think we'll keep that. But we need to grow. And it's not because we want to feel better about the numbers that we have or anything like that, or it's a financial thing. We need to grow because disciples of Jesus make disciples. That's what we do. Now, just remember, when you invite them, it's not like, I'm going to get them to church, and then the pastor's going to sick them. Like, well, the pastor can convert them. It usually does not work that way. Okay? It's better to actually walk with them through the experience. Like, sit with them in church, talk about it afterward with them, Ren group, whatever. If you have any kind of relationship with this person, you are in a way better position to actually help them become a follower of Jesus than I am. You're the evangelist. See, when you think about it, most of us are evangelists about some things. Let's say you try a new restaurant and it just knocks your socks off. You just love it. Chances are you're going to tell your friends, your family about it. There's this new place you got to try. When people come into town from up north, that's where you always take them, things like that. By the way, if you know of anywhere like that around here, let us know. We're always looking for fun new places to try. Maybe it'll become one of our favorites too. Don't be like one of those people who you don't want to tell anybody else because you're afraid of it becoming too popular and then it's too crowded. I mean, come on. I mean, don't try to hoard it. Share the goodness. If we can be evangelists about things like our favorite restaurants or our favorite movies, things we bought on sale, whatever, we can tell our Jesus stories. Okay, a couple more things to remember as we prepare to tell our stories. First, pray about this. Don't skip this step. There are probably people you can think of right now in your life who don't know Jesus. Or they're not living for him right now. And I know for some, it's people who are very, very close to you. Spouses, kids, close friends, parents. Pray for them. I know many of you are. Pray for them every day. Pray that God will soften their heart and open their ears. Pray that God will give you the words to use with them, the wisdom to know how and when to talk to them, what to invite them to, things like that. Some of them might even bring it up with you. You might be surprised. So be ready. Be ready to tell your story. Now, we cannot make the decision to follow Jesus for someone else, as much as we might want to. That's not how it works. But pray for those people in your life. Also, pray that God will open doors, give you opportunities to talk to other people, coworkers, neighbors, that person who cuts your hair or serves your coffee. It is amazing how God will open doors like this when we pray about it. So be on the lookout. Have your radar up if you're going to pray this prayer. Somebody asks you, oh, what'd you do this weekend? Well, I went to church. Oh, you went to church? Oh, what church? Well, there's this new church. We meet in the middle school. And now you're talking about church and spiritual things, and you're talking about Jesus. Now, these conversations probably are going to sound different than the conversations that you have with your close friends and family. Because remember, these are people. They're not projects. And many people don't respond well, like I said, to a lot of pressure or a sales pitch. So don't try to force the conversation in a certain direction. That typically won't work, anyway. And it might even do more harm than good. But pray for the opportunities and be on the lookout. Can I brag on my wife for a minute? Jen is amazing at this. Some of you are here, some of you are watching online because Jen met you somewhere and she talked to you about our church or about Jesus. That's the power one person can have. And that brings up the second thing. Go. I mean, not now, we're not done yet, but it's the first action word of the Great Commission. Go and make disciples. Some people say it should be translated as you're going. Make disciples. It assumes that you're going to go. In another place, Jesus says to go into all the world and preach the gospel to all creation. God does call some people to tell others about Jesus in another country, another state, with a certain population, that he did with my family. It's really important work. But for many more of us, he may be calling us to go across the hallway, go across the street, or go out of our comfort zone. Telling your Jesus story may not be as intimidating as going door to door or doing a sales pitch, but it can still be uncomfortable. It can still be scary because you're putting yourself out there. And not everybody responds positively, and we gotta let them not respond positively. You might be afraid that people will think less of you or whatever if you're going to share your faith with them, and I'm not saying that can't happen. It sure can. That's why we try to be sensitive to God's leading on exactly what to say and how to say it, but even if God is leading us, they still have the choice of how to respond. But I think it's worth it. I think it is worth it going out of our comfort zone. Because life is better with Jesus. This life, the next life for sure, and Jesus helps us to be better at life. And if what Jesus said about him being the only way to God is true, and I'd say that Jesus has earned the right for us to trust him on that. That's what happens when you correctly predict your own death and resurrection. Then it's worth it to be a little vulnerable, to be a little uncomfortable for the sake of letting people know about what Jesus and only Jesus can do for them. If we really believe what we say about Jesus being the way, the truth, and the life, how could we not tell the people in our lives about it. If heaven and hell are real, as the Bible says they are, if without Jesus people are truly lost forever, don't we have to do our part to tell our Jesus stories? You might have heard of somebody named Penn Jillette. He's half of the famous comedy illusionist team, Penn and Teller. They've been on TV. They've been famous for a long time. Penn Jillette is an avowed atheist, very outspoken. He's written books mocking religious faith. But back in 2009, someone who attended one of his shows gave Penn the gift of a Bible. Now, you might expect Penn Jillette to just mock the guy, trash the Bible, whatever, I don't know. But he was actually really touched by this guy's heart and the note he wrote in the Bible. He posted about it on social media, made a video on YouTube. He made it very clear that he is very confident that there's no God, no hell, no need to save someone from hell. But he said that for people who do believe that, if you really believe that, why wouldn't they do whatever they could to tell people about Jesus? He said, quote, "How much do you have to hate someone to hold back an action that you believe determines whether they live or die?" I think he makes a pretty good point. If you would not consider yourself a follower of Jesus today, and I don't want to assume that everyone who hears this does, whether you're here in person or you're watching online at some point, I'm really glad you're listening. Jesus has made my life better. He has made me better at life than I am without him. And what happens after this life, I believe, will be far better because of him. That's not blind faith. That's a worldview that is well supported by evidence, by history. And for me, it's the only way to understand the world that makes sense. I'd love to talk with you more about it. And not just me. There are others here who would love to share their Jesus stories as well. But if you do consider yourself a follower of Jesus, as he said, if anyone wants to be my disciple, they must deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. Apprentice at his feet. Grow your relationship with him. Become like him. Learn to live like him, love like him, give like him, and go like him. That's the path of discipleship. Tell your story. Don't just be a disciple. Help make new ones and better ones. It's what we're all called to do. That's our commission, because Jesus really is the hope of the world. There is a song that people have been singing in church for decades, around 100 years. It originally comes from India. Apparently, the person who wrote it was killed for his faith in Jesus. But this song is a really simple declaration of commitment and dedication to following Jesus. And since we're at the end of this series, I just want to sing it now with just our voices. If you're familiar with this, go ahead and sing along. If not, you'll probably pick it up pretty fast. I encourage you to make this song your prayer as we wrap up this part of our time together. I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. No turning back, no turning back. The world behind me, the cross before me. The world behind me, the cross before me. The world behind me, the cross before me, no turning back, no turning back. Though none go with me, still I will follow. Though none go with me, still I will follow. Though none go with me, still I will follow. No turning back, no turning back. I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. No turning back, no turning back.